Everyone, welcome to another episode of Advancing With. Today we're speaking with Candace Kantz, who's the president and founder of CSK Advertising. Candace, tell us a little about yourself and say what's up.
My name's Candace Kantz, and I am the president and founder of CSK Advertising, which is a full service media planning and buying agency. We work directly with clients on their media planning and buying, and we also partner with creative agencies or other agencies who might not have a full service media department in-house.
So how did you come to find CSK Advertising? Like what's the story behind that?
Sure. So I come from a long line of entrepreneurs, and I've always had this dream of owning my own business. And in 2015, I had lost a job, and I was struggling, and it was just really hard balancing the work and the personal life. The reputation of our industry is that people work very long, hard hours, and it was a grind. And I've always thought that, we can work smarter, harder, and still find balance in our lives. So that was the passion of opening CSK Advertising, enable myself and others to do smart work and produce results for our clients, but also balance our family and other life situations. So when we started in 2015, we were fully remote from the beginning.
That's super cool and also like kind of ahead of the time. Being in 2015, one, first, congrats on 7 years. That's amazing, right? Like
Thank you.
not every business makes it to that. But two is like, there's already challenges with starting a business, even if you have industry experience like you had some great industry experience before that. But what were the challenges that you ran into not only as a new business owner in those first couple of years, but also running everything remotely?
I've been very fortunate. I think in this industry, it's a lot about who you know. And, I spent 12 years at MARC USA. Through that time period, I met a lot of people, and the way we sat in cross-functional teams. So I was not only sitting with the media people, I was sitting with the creative people and account people. And so the challenge of getting new clients was not that difficult because I knew so many people in the market who were looking for media services that I had interacted with prior. I think still to this day, my biggest challenge is finding more of my own time, not for personal, but there's a lot of new business pitches. And what I've spent our money on is staff running the media campaigns. And I need a duplicate me to help with new business pitches and growth. The other biggest challenge is, when is the right time to add another staff member? I was never a fan of, if one client walks out the door, then you have to lay off 5 people. I remember that fear sitting in an agency when you knew you lost an account and who was going to be on the chopping block. So one of the things that I've been very careful in building my business is to make sure that there is not one client in particular that if they walked away tomorrow would take away half my staff. So when managing an agency like that, you also have to be very careful when you're taking on a new employee, because I feel personally responsible for my employees, not responsible for their work, but responsible for their employment and their livelihood as far as income is concerned. So, making those decisions along the way of when to add and when not to add has always been a challenge.
I appreciate your candor because as a business owner and my business partners, I think that's something we don't want to be the people that hire someone and then have to fire them. Like that's the last thing we want to do. And like
Yes.
sometimes you're too conservative in that approach and you put more work on yourselves and unfortunately sometimes your employees, which you try to avoid. But yeah, that's also because of that fear, right? So I think it's a very,
Yes.
very good point.
And I've also been very careful because I think we've all had clients that were not very pleasant to work on throughout our careers, and they can really burn your employees. As a business owner, I've walked away from client relationships regardless of the income, because I want myself and my employees to be inspired and not have the dread of a client, because honestly, without my staff, I have nothing. And I have a really talented, fantastic staff. And I would never want someone to walk away because of the work.
So how do you manage that thought process of like, well, they're not great to work with, but like the money's great. How have you balanced that? Because I think it can be difficult when you're trying to be like, but I also need the money to pay myself and the employees more importantly. So how have you
Right.
balanced that?
Well, one thing I never do is count the money before it's on the books. So if we bring on a new client, I most of the time make sure it's an actual fit before we start accruing the revenue. Because I think most of us, during the new business process, it can be all sunshine and roses. And then when you start working together, pretty quickly you can determine if there's a fit. So that's generally how I've balanced it.
Now that it's been 7 years, what is your advice to individuals who may be considering going out on their own to start their businesses?
Number one, have a few months of your salary saved up in cash, because I think most of us started as it's me, myself, and I, right? Before we start hiring or adding more people to our staff. And even if you have a client that starts the day that you open your business, which I had at the time, it will take a few months before that money comes in. And you don't want to be borrowing money or not being able to pay your own bills to do that. So when we started CSK, I had my own personal funding behind me to allow that natural process with clients to happen. Number two, manage your growth. Make sure that you're taking care of the clients you have before adding additional clients. So that way you can have managed growth, not explosive growth. And third, don't ask an employee to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. Those would be my three keys. Oh, and hire a lawyer and an accountant.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. What is something that surprised you about being a business owner?
How hard it was to hire the first employee. If you have somebody leaving another agency or position to come work for you, you have to make sure that you have the money to support them. And a lot of companies fail in their first year of business. So that was a very stressful decision for me. And it was a major turning point for CSK as an agency because it allowed us to start to grow beyond what I could physically get done in a day.
And what do you think? Well, let's start basic first. Like, what is your vision for your company next 5 years?
Next 5 years, I would like us to continue to grow with staff and obviously clients. CSK is concentrated in the paid media segment of advertising. And I would like to double my digital staff in the next 5 years at least. And, actually bring in some account service people to help manage the day to day, which again would allow me a little bit more time to focus on new business.
As a business owner and a leader, what do you think makes a good leader, in your opinion?
Empowering your employees to do good work, trusting that your employees are going to do their job, and providing training and support whenever it's needed. Micromanaging is a waste of time. I don't have time for it. There's not an employee that I've ever met that wants to be micromanaged. If I spent my entire day trying to oversee every decision all my employees made, I would be I wouldn't sleep. And the other thing that I would say is acknowledging your employees' impact on your business. Anytime I receive a compliment from a client on an employee, I make sure that it is passed along. I don't wait a year to give a raise. I give a raise when someone has worked very hard and we can afford to do it, especially in their first year when you realize how valuable they are to your business and you don't want to lose them. And making sure they know what they're doing for your business and making sure that you are sharing in the rewards of the business. It's not that I'm handing, any employee the company checkbook for their own personal use, but I think making sure that their pay is representative of the impact they have on your business is huge.
kind of flipping the script a bit. So we're talking about internally and like being a good leader internally. How do you be a great partner for your clients?
I think transparency is huge between an agency and its partner. We are very transparent what we make money on, how we make money, and what our fees are. Number two, we are collaborative. In the end, the best results are a result of that collaboration. So it's knowing your client's industry not as well as they do, but knowing enough that you can make smart marketing decisions. So really ingraining yourself into a client's business is something that I expect myself to do as well as my staff, because you're less likely to be successful if you don't understand how they make money, how a customer gets to them, how a customer converts, and what that timeline looks like. We have to be knowledgeable about everything that we can be.
What is your advice to individuals that are only going to our industry now, meaning they're out of college or they're only a couple of years into the career? Like, what's your, what do you want to say to them?
You have to be curious about everything, not just what task is in front of you. And so always be receptive, even when you think you know something, to hearing somebody else's advice, experience, understanding of a problem or situation, because someone around you might have a lot more information than you do. I personally learned so much by listening to other people who were more knowledgeable than I was in my career. If you are working physically in an office, take out your earbuds. Stop listening to music and trying to drown out everybody around you. I learned the art of negotiation sitting across from people who had 15 or 25 years experience, just listening to how they approached it. Now, you always make your own style, but you pick up something from so many people. And when we did talk about challenges, I think one of the challenges today with a lot of our industry is the virtual workspace. How do we instill the knowledge that we all have to somebody who's just entering this field? Because we're not sitting beside each other. So if you're starting in a virtual company, find a way to listen. Ask somebody to go to coffee with you and just talk from your company. Ask to sit on meetings, and you don't even have to have a speaking role. Just ask to listen. Find ways to ingrain yourself so that you can listen to people who have been in this business, who understand the clients, the industry, and grow from there.
On a more personal note, how do you find, we talked at the beginning of our conversation, kind of like finding balance, like for yourself between work and life, and how are you currently finding balance? What do you do to unplug? What do you do to refresh the mind a bit, if you can? I know sometimes that
Yeah,
can be an
yeah.
impossibility.
Well, my husband and I have two beautiful children. One will be 12 very shortly, and one is 9. We are a family that loves to travel. So we try to take as many mini vacations and vacations as possible. And number two, my lifelong dream is to be a self-funded philanthropist. I just don't have the self-funded part. So 2 years ago, a few of us in my community started doing work in our community, trying to gift children in need educational tools. And so we officially made that a nonprofit at the beginning of 2022. The nonprofit's name is The Andrew Effect, but I love it. It is a way that I unwind. It's a way that I give back. And my husband laughs at me because he's like, you're the only person that I know that unwinds from work by doing more work. But it's work that is so rewarding. Yeah. And then my husband and I also like to watch Netflix or Hulu series together. That's how I unwind.
Candace, really appreciate your insights today. Thank you so much for the conversation. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of Vancing With. Have a good one.